News that is coming from Myanmar, where to force a return to democracy in Myanmar, Myanmar's envoy to the United Nations, Robertson, has urged for a no-fly zone to be imposed there, arms embargo and also targeted sanctions against the Myanmarese military. The call has come after Robertson rebelled against the military junta. Listen in to what he's had to say.
Thank the members of the Security Council and the UN Secretary General for the support extended to the people of Myanmar. But it is necessity to have strong and urgent actions from the UN Security Council. In order to save lives of innocent civilians in Myanmar, your collective strongest action is needed immediately. Time is of the essence for us. Please take action now.
Now, during the first public discussion on Myanmar by the council members, ousted lawmakers have urged the United Nations Security Council to take action against the military junta. Zin Mar Ong, who is the acting foreign minister for a group of ousted lawmakers known as the CRPH, has said that the group recognizes an international reluctance to carry out direct physical intervention to stop the violence against the civilians. The group has further warned that further deterioration could actually lead to more human suffering. The United Nations Security Council has held several closed formal briefings and has also issued statements expressing concern, but any stronger action is unlikely to come forth as the veto-wielding powers China and Russia have traditionally shielded Myanmar at the United Nations. The United States, meanwhile, has demanded swift action from the United Nations Security Council on Myanmar. It is also pushing for a resolution to pressurize the military junta. Despite the mounting international efforts for a diplomatic solution, Myanmar's junta has refused to let a United Nations envoy visit the country. The United Nations Special Envoy for Myanmar, Christine Schraner-Burgener, wants to travel to Myanmar for face-to-face meetings with the military generals. The Burgener also informed on Twitter that the military junta has refused to receive her. France's Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations, Nathalie Broadhurst, has announced a Southeast Asian summit on Myanmar crisis on the 20th of April. The talks are expected to take place in Jakarta. In another development in Myanmar, the military junta has offered for the very first time a time frame for elections to be held since it ousted the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. Now, the military junta has said that it will hold fresh elections within a span of the next 2 years and will transition power to an elected government after that. While claiming that anti-coup protests are dwindling under the military rule, the troops fired rifle grenades at the anti-coup protesters. Myanmar has ground to a virtual standstill because of the protests and also because of the widespread strikes against the military rule. According to reports that have come in, at least about 600 people so far have been killed during the protests by the security forces cracking down on the demonstrators against the coup. But a military junta spokesperson has told a news conference that the country is now actually returning to normal and that the government ministries and banks will resume full operations pretty soon. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of what's actually happening in Myanmar, we are joined in by Phil Robertson, who's the Deputy Director at the Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. Phil, thank you very much indeed for joining us in this broadcast on WION. Now, this is an interesting situation that is playing out in Myanmar. The military junta does not look like it would like to relent any time in the near future. But this statement that's been made by the ambassador there, where he's asked for a no-fly zone, for an arms embargo and for more direct action by international powers, do you think the international community would be willing to actually go do any of this on Myanmar?
Well, I hope that we will see a UN Security Council resolution that would focus on the issue of an arms embargo that would prevent arms and dual-use technology from reaching the Myanmar military and police. I think that is a doable step. I think that that is a resolution that should come forward at the UN Security Council. And if Russia and China want to veto it, then they need to explain why they are supporting a military that is shooting down children in their homes, that is massacring the people. It is time now for China and Russia to either put up or shut up. They need to basically say that they're going to defend this publicly, that they're going to defend these horrible human rights violations that are taking place in Myanmar, or they're going to allow the international community to move forward with some sensible steps, such as an arms embargo, that would be an important ratcheting up of pressure against the Myanmar military.
Absolutely, indeed. Now, a lot of people are looking at the developments within Myanmar. What is said is that the lifeline that the military junta actually has is the support that it can actually get from China internationally and also locally to carry forth with the crackdown it does on the demonstrators. How far will the Chinese back the military junta in this case?
Well, that's a very good question. China is essentially conflicted in this situation. People forget that China also supports the Northern Alliance, which it's an insurgent alliance of 4 groups, including the Kachin and the United Wa State Army and others. They keep that as a hedge against the Myanmar military. So there's a lot of distrust between the Myanmar military and China. China is doing whatever it feels it needs to do to look out for its own interests in Myanmar. And that involves a Belt and Road Initiative, the creation of this China-Myanmar economic corridor, which is going to connect the Rakhine state with a road and a gas pipeline all the way to Yunnan. And that is what China really cares about. And if they feel that there's a threat against those interests by the Myanmar military, I think that they may take action. So China's an unpredictable player, but the problem, frankly, is Russia. Russia has been providing arms to the Myanmar military for quite some time. Those jet planes that are bombing the ethnic Karen on the eastern border, are coming from Russia. And the reality is that Russia, I think, wants to continue to sell arms to Myanmar.
Right, and also the turmoil within Myanmar is leading to a refugee crisis. There is a meeting of the ASEAN nations that is scheduled to take place in Jakarta on the 20th of this month. Can the ASEAN exert any kind of influence on what the military is doing within Myanmar?
Well, we hope that they can somehow figure out a way to restrain the violence that the Myanmar military is using against its own people. But it's unclear because ASEAN is split. You have Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam who are basically taking the Myanmar military side and saying we don't want to intervene in any way, shape, and form, versus Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, who are saying that we need to do something because this is affecting the credibility of our organization, ASEAN, and also the region. And we will see if they can bridge those differences, but the gap looks pretty wide so far.
And also the Myanmarese military generals, they are now claiming that the protests are dying down. People within Myanmar claim the military generals want peace, and so they are going back to their homes and they are resuming their normal duties. What are you picking up with the information that you are getting about the protests in Myanmar and how the military is going about crushing them?
Well, the Myanmar military is lying. The situation is not dying down. I mean, people are changing tactics. Obviously, people are not going to charge into machine guns or rocket-propelled grenades of the sort that were used against the barricades in Bago yesterday, where there may have been as many as 60 people killed. But they are going to continue to show ways to protest. They're going to be creative. I don't think that the Myanmar military has gained any popularity whatsoever among the Myanmar people, and that the people are prepared to resist. They're not prepared to go back to the nearly 5 decades of military rule that existed before the transition started in 2011. And no one believes this time frame of 2 years that the Myanmar military has set out to say that they're going to hold election again. They've lied about those things in the past, and people expect they will lie about this again.
Yeah, actually, a few weeks ago, it was a time frame of a year that the military generals had said that they would hold an election and have a transition of power to a civilian government. And now they've said that it will be within the next 2 years. The question that I want to ask you is, the demonstrators at this point of time, will they bother at all by the military?
I think that they, look, the protesters want the military out, and they're going to do whatever they can to try to make that happen.
All right, we will have to look out what actually plays out there.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I don't expect that the fact that they're denying the UN Special Envoy access to Myanmar really shows that the military is not interested in negotiations at this time. And that's unfortunate because I think ultimately there has to be some sort of brokered solution on this to prevent the bloodshed from increasing.
Absolutely, indeed. But Phil, my last question to you is, would Myanmar want the United Nations to in fact step in and try broker some kind of a resolution with the demonstrators? Is that something that the Myanmarese military, because at least that would give them a semblance of certain amount of legitimacy that, look, they are trying to work towards a peaceful solution, would they be open to that?
I don't think they're open to that at this time. I think that, the fact that they're keeping the special envoy out means that they really view the UN as being part of the opposition or part of the people that the Myanmar military can't trust. I think that the Myanmar military wants to crush the protests completely and then consider to talk. This is a very sort of a military-owned mindset, one that looks at the issue from a battlefield perspective. And they're treating these crackdowns against the protesters and against the protest camps as now really sort of military engagements on a battlefield where you have machine guns, hand grenades, and rocket-propelled grenades being used against basically unarmed demonstrators.
Absolutely, indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Phil Robertson, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.